folks, it's Jungle Drums. How we doing this evening? How you doing, Jay?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. How you doing?
Not too bad at all. Gim's just going to be a few minutes late. He's just powering through his dinner. So no problems there. Let me just hold on here. Just tweaking a few things. And right, so this week, as we know, Computex is a thing that's happening over in is it Taipei or Taiwan? Taipei, I think. But anyway, Computex usually is where, you know, we see all sorts of amazing cool bits of hardware and whatnot. So there's been you know, confirmation of certain leaks, certain rumors that have occurred, you know, over the last few weeks or even months. Now, if you've watched previously, you know we've been trying to we've stayed on top of these things, right? We've been keeping our eyes on, well, what was originally called Whitehaven. Whitehaven's the platform, but then we learned the new AMD chip is going to be called Threadripper, the 16-core, 32-threaded monster of a processor that AMD's bringing out. And you may recall, was it last week or the week before, Jay, we briefly talked about the i9.
I can't remember if it was mentioned last week or not. I know it came up at some point.
Which at that point it was still just rumored. You know, nothing was absolutely confirmed. We weren't sure of specs and whatnot. Well, our first bit of news this evening is from Tech Radar, and straight from Computex, is that Intel has officially announced their monster 18-core Skylake X Core i9, and this is part of the new Core X series processor family. Basically, the Core X is, you know, for the hardcore, for the enthusiast. Intel's claims are that this new i9 is the world's first ever consumer processor with 18 cores and 36 threads, which, if you're keeping up, that's basically more threads than the Threadripper that's coming from AMD, which was only going to be pushing 32. So, you know, hey, it's got 2 more cores. The interesting claim from Intel is it's the first ever teraflop desktop CPU. Of course, talking about, you know, computation and whatnot. So that's quite amazing, actually, because everything's always been described in, you know, how many gigaflops and whatnot. So now that we've actually entered the age of the teraflop, it almost sounds like a dinosaur, doesn't it? A teraflop. Oh my God, the attack of the teraflop. But, you know, what this means for us as consumers is that, look, you know, once again, hey, thank you, Mr. Creature, for the tweet. It looks like Intel and AMD are once again now engaging in this full-on CPU arms race, which hasn't happened. I mean, I think if we're honest, the last time this happened was when the Athlons had came out, when, you know, back when the Intels were pushing their clock speed, and then AMD had slower clock speeds, but said, no, this chip, like the 3200 plus, will outperform, you know, an Intel at 3.2 gig. You know, that was back when we had some proper rivalry between the two. And I mean, lately, the last few years, AMD's just been going a totally different direction. Their enthusiast processors just weren't really up to snuff. But anyway, let's talk more about this, the i9. There's going to be... the very first one that's coming out is the i9 7900X, and this is going to be a 10-core, so 20-thread processor. But then later down the line, there's going to be an 18, a 16, a 14, and a 12, all coming soon. The specs we've got in the 10-core variant are nothing to bat your eyes at all. I mean, it's coming with a base clock of 3.3 gigahertz, with Intel Turbo Boost technology, well, Boost Max technology, that's going to up the frequency to 4.5 gig. Now, I find this interesting because those of you who have an Intel out there, or any AMD chip that has Boost technology, you'll know that Boost technology is great for gaming, right? I mean, you know, it boosts your clock speed, gives you that extra performance. But the downside of Boost is it shuts down half of the cores. I believe we discussed this previously as well. Which, you know, so if you've got a quad-core processor and you're trying to stream or you're doing video editing and whatnot, that's a huge detriment. But on one of these beasts, losing half of your cores, you know, isn't going to be as huge of a deal. Some of the other specs, I mean, 13 and 3/4 megabytes of level 3 cache, support for quad channel DDR4 at 2666 megahertz out the box. And they're saying a TDP thermal design power of about 140 watts. So for Intel, that's a bit higher than, you know, what a lot of their chips push, but it absolutely makes sense. This is going to be a beast of a processor. And yes, you know, so one of the big things about this this new platform, this Core X, is when you get into the PCI Express lanes. Now, you'll know that a motherboard has only so many PCI Express lanes. You know, you can't just hook up 4 GTX 1080 Ti's and expect amazing performance. You know, you have to have enough PCI Express lanes to use all of those cards to their maximum potential. Well, the i9 platform is going to have up to 44 PCI Express lanes, as well as integrate support for the new Intel Optane memory. So, I mean, these i9s, I mean, they look absolutely amazing. I mean, they're saying the claims from Intel, we know how claims can be, they're not always accurate, but these 8th generation processors are going to give a 30% performance improvement over the current 7th gen. And the 7th gens are no slouch, believe me. They're saying that they're going to be up to 10% faster for multi-thread performance and up to 15% faster for single-thread performance. And of course, all of these processors are going to make use of Intel's, new X399 chipset. So this new platform is going to be exceptional for gaming, exceptional for virtual reality. You can just imagine for productivity as well, video editing, any type of CAD, 3D object manipulation. It's going to be quite exciting, really quite interesting. The downside of all this amazing technology is they also discussed prices, right? So that base level i9, the 7900X, which is the 10-core 20-thread processor, that's going to retail for $999 US. That converts to 780 quid, but considering how things usually price, guys, I'm assuming it won't be 780 quid. It'll probably be the same, but with a pound instead of a dollar symbol, or what do you think? I mean, I'm trying to remember if with hardware it works out that way. I'm sure it tends to.
Not too sure, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure that the, when we convert the dollar to pounds, that's usually not the price we pay. We usually actually pay a little bit more over here. So that's quite expensive for the 10 core. Well, okay, Jungle. If the 10 core costs $1,000 in US dollars, how much is the 18 core? Well, according to Intel, that bad boy is going to retail for $1,999. So yes, 8 more cores costs you another grand. It's oh my goodness. I mean, you know, these to step up to this new platform. I mean, think about it. You know, you're going to have a new motherboard, which I'm assuming the motherboards aren't going to be cheap. Then, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 for the processor. Then also, if you've always been running Intel, there's a good chance that your power supply is probably, you know, lower than what a lot of folk on AMD use. So there's going to be a lot of things you're going to have to think about if you want to incorporate the i9 into your upgrade path. But I think the most interesting thing about this i9 announcement is that it feels so much like a response to Ryzen, and well, specifically the new Threadripper. I mean, you see how, you know, basically they're trying to play almost like Trump. It's like, look, we've got, you know, more cores now. We've got 2 more cores than you. You know, is this going to be the new You know, years ago it was the clock speed race. Who could be faster? Now are we getting into this core race? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But some interesting tech. Not that any of us, I think, are going to be in a position to buy one of these anytime soon. But still, it's good. It's good for the industry and it's good for competition. I mean, what do you guys think of that? $2,000 for a processor?
I'm thinking that's a hell of a lot of money for
That
a processor.
Yeah. I mean, even if we
I'll
got...
take 5.
You take 5. I mean, even if we got that at the proper exchange rate, that's 1,500 quid. I mean...
I don't even think I could warrant, if I had the money to blow, and I was like, I could buy this, I don't even think I could persuade myself to buy it. I just don't think I could warrant spending that much money on a processor that, quite frankly, well, it will last a long time. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
something new and shiny will come out.
Exactly.
And I'll be like, oh, I want that as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. That's the problem with technology. I think, you know, I mean, my hat's off to early adopters and those people that want to always stay in the cutting edge. But, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the minute you do that, I mean, it's going to be not necessarily obsolete, but outdated within, you know, a few months. Especially now, the way that this race is ramping up. I mean, I firmly believe, you know, if you're a tech enthusiast, you just have to kind of choose a compromise, choose a level that you're happy with. If you say, look, I'm not going to spend more than this, then okay, look, just do your damnedest to get the best thing you can in that price. You know, if it's a case of, you know, trying to save a bit of money here to improve an area, like for instance, RAM. RAM's a prime example. You know, do you need shiny RGB lights with brushed aluminium heat sinks on your RAM sticks, or just plain old green ones that have the same stats, the same speeds, you know, for considerably cheaper? I mean, you know, if you're on a budget, there's ways that you can rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. Whereas the way that some of these enthusiast level bits of hardware going, I mean, good God, I mean, you need to take out a loan. You know, I mean, you're gonna have to, you know, I mean, yes, you can get financing and stuff, but I mean, oh, just to think that the price that one of those systems would cost is just, it's amazing.
It'd be great, as I said before, to see what they can get out of this in terms of breaking records and stuff like that, and they can do with it. But as you say, it's enthusiast support.
Yeah,
it's what it is. It's no, unless you have any need for that sort of power, which even looking at that for current games and stuff,
I mean,
seems overkill.
We've talked about this with games. I mean, so few games take advantage of multiple cores. I mean, okay, recently more and more are starting to, but even then, trying to get a game to actually take full advantage of a quad core with hyper-threading, it usually doesn't happen. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with the architecture. I mean, if you open up your task manager when you're running a game, a lot of times you'll see that the game gets, you know, what they call affinity, right? Where it assigns the resources to this core, that core, and this core. To really, really take advantage of multi-core systems, out of the box, they don't just do things automatically very well. You need to go in and manually set your affinity. Like, for example, if you're streaming, and say you had one of these 18-core beasts, you could say to yourself, right, well, okay, how many cores do I need for a good streaming experience? Okay, let's say, we'll just say 6. And you could assign, like in my case, XSplit. Assign 6 of those cores exclusively to XSplit. Oh, I've got music playing in the background. Right, I'm going to put the music player, my chat, and all this affinity to another core. You know, these are the types of things you can do, which very few people do because, let's be honest, it's a pain in the ass. It takes quite a bit of setting up to do that. But you can, and that's how you can fully take advantage. I mean, imagine when you're trying to stream a game, it'd be the same thing. You might have this 18-core beast, and you're streaming, and there's 6 cores that are left untouched, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to assign the game I'm playing strictly to those 6 cores. So there's a lot of possibilities for these systems, but as you say, Jay, for your normal average gamer, they're really,
That's just
they're wasted on us. I mean, yeah, you'll have your benchmark scores will be amazing. You'll be able to run Cinebench, faster than anybody out there. But what does that mean? When, are you gonna, if you have this new i9, is your gaming experience going to be better than my 4th gen i7, right? If we're playing Overwatch on PC, are you going to have a better experience than me? Well, I don't think so. You'll be able to play it and do Cinebench and run, all these other things, but it doesn't, for gamers, it's not a huge deal. But what is a huge deal is how, okay, that's the level that, their hardcore stuff's at. And what always happens with technology, right? It trickles its way down. It's the same with motor vehicles. F1 discovers all this technology, all these new things, and it ends up trickling down to your average consumer. So no, quite interesting. But so that's the i9. It has officially been announced, Computex. Now, we've talked about the i9, so hey, we've got to keep this balanced, and we've got a bit more of Ryzen news. Now, obviously, we had the official reveal the other week about Threadripper and whatnot, but the thing we hadn't seen was the motherboards. What was the new platform going to be for Threadripper? So our friends over at WCCF Tech, they posted an article up, and it was unveiling the Asus Republic of Gamers X399 Zenith Extreme motherboard. And also the Crosshair 6 has also been detailed. I want to leave not this image up, but this one right here just for a minute, because if you're familiar with a motherboard, if you're familiar with how a socket usually looks, we'll just take a look at the size of this one. This thing is huge. And what this does, right, the size of this socket, it actually proves what a lot of people were kind of speculating on, saying that, look, have they basically, for this Threadripper, have they just kind of Frankensteined two Ryzens together? Is that what they've done? And maybe they haven't Frankensteined them, but when you look at the size of the socket, I mean, that does look about the size, because it's rectangular as well. It looks about the size of two processors put together. So the thing is huge. And so the processor itself is going to be huge as well. I mean, it's got over 4,000 pins. Power for the motherboard comes through dual 8 pins, right? Even that is huge. When you think of most Intel motherboards, right, you've got obviously your big 24 pin, the one for, all the devices and whatnot. And then it's usually, a 4 pin that goes in, right? Some of the newer systems, yes, had 8 pins, but this has dual 8 pin configuration, and that's specifically for the processor itself. So, oh my goodness, this thing is going to eat up a lot of power. Just the motherboard, never mind the processor on top of that. But no, these boards look absolutely amazing. These are going to be the flagship boards that Asus is going to offer. And so that socket is known as SP3 or, TR4, depending on who you ask. And it's got a total of 8 DDR4 DIMM slots on the board. But then you also have a DIMM 0.2 slot, which can support up to 2 NVMe M2 drives. If you're not familiar with M2 drives, which if you're watching a show, I would hope you are, the M2 drives are the SSDs on crack, right? You've got your SSD, but then you've got the M2 drives or NVMEs that they look almost like a stick of RAM, but they're smaller. And these are just, it's an SSD without all the extra crap, without the housing on it, without, any of that stuff. And instead of having to go through the SATA connection, these link directly into the motherboard, so they can be accessed directly by the processor. It's one of those things that's on my wish list. My motherboard does support that, and I keep meaning to, when I have enough money to actually spare for something like that, I'm going to do it. Even so, I have my operating system on an SSD, moving to an NVMe M2 is going to make an even more noticeable difference. But yeah, they're looking good. These boards are going to have 4 PCI Express times 16 slots. So for all you quad SLI junkies out there, you'll be able to hook that up, no problem. Yeah, 6 serial ATA, 3 ports, dual USB 3.0 front panel headers. It's of course, because it's Asus Republic of Gamers, it's got the Aura Sync lighting technology, and it has the latest Supreme FX audio system on board the PCB. The Supreme FX audio system from Asus is quite nice. Which makes me think. You'll remember, G, remember when you had to have a sound card? Like, it was. If you were in a computing, you never used the onboard audio. You always bought, one of the sound blasters or whatever, brand you preferred. But nowadays, the onboard audio is just, it's so good. Like, I don't know, the only people I know that use add-in audio cards are like DJs or music makers and whatnot that need, special professional level cards. But it's weird. It's interesting. That, just thinking about that, they just kind of died out. But I'll just show an image of this again, of how sexy this board is. Just a lovely, lovely looking bit of kit. This heatsink that's over here, actually, the M2, I believe it has some slots over there. No, there's the DIMM 2 there for the new style of NVMe. Pretty neat, pretty interesting. But yeah, a nice looking board. Now, one thing that article doesn't say is the price. But I was watching the it wasn't live, but it was a video of another amazing tech journalist who was at Computex Live, and he was holding a thing, he's talking about it, and he estimated the price, and he got the nod from Asus. That motherboard is going to be $600 US dollars. That's about the range, somewhere in that $500 to $600 range. So I mean, I don't know what that'll translate to in our money over here, but that's a pricey bit of kit. Which kind of makes me speculate. We just talked about the i9, and we've talked about Threadripper before. And this is what's kind of interesting is, we've talked about Threadripper a lot. Let's be honest. You would think that we're AMD fanboys. We're fans of AMD, but we're not fanboys. And the fact that AMD's planning to introduce the Threadripper, is awesome. I mean, that's cool. But that's not the big deal. The big deal is how much are they going to cost. Now that we know that the i9 is going to be $1,000 for the 10 core and $2,000 for the 18 core, so probably about $1,700 for the 16 core, whatever. We know that now. We know Intel's pricing model. Well, what's AMD going to do in response? Will AMD charge in with the same kind of ballpark as Intel to try to get its profit margins up there? Or is it going to continue? Because let's be honest, years past, that was AMD's thing. AMD always kind of underbid Intel. They went with a cheaper product. That they were the bargain overclocker deal, right? They were for the folk that were savvy with their money and wanted a bit more punch for what little money they had. Is that what they're going to do? Are they going to continue? Are they going to try to underbid them, or are they going to just say, well, look, if Intel's offering that, all we need to do is undercut them by a little bit? I just don't know. I mean, the Ryzen 8 core processors are starting at around $300, so it would seem a little silly to make a huge jump from 300 to 1,000. But then again, if the motherboard alone costs 600, I'm just not sure. I mean, I know we've talked about prices before, and it's pure speculation, G. But I mean, what do you think AMD's gonna do? Are they gonna, now that we know the Intel prices, same ballpark, or try to undercut them? I mean, or is it just, who the hell knows?
I reckon they'll go lower. I don't know how much buy, but I don't think they'll be as expensive. I would say it'd be a good move for them, to be fair, to have as a lower price, due to the fact of obviously Intel is their competitor. So it'll be interesting to see what they want to do with it and how they want to play it out. As you said, was it the 8-core ones you said were 300?
Yeah.
So that's not too bad, to be fair. I reckon they might, with the Threadripper, be almost. They might, the higher ones, almost compete with Intel for prices in terms of maybe just undercut slightly, but you might find I would say the average ones, which are the ones that more people like to buy, they might try and keep a bit lower to try and, I suppose, bump those sales almost. And then try and pick up potentially more profits from those higher cards for those enthusiasts, potentially. I'm not a business person though, so I could be completely wrong there, but you've got to look at those things like the Threadrippers and this i9, they are, I almost want to say, aimed at like a 1% almost, or whatever you want to. They're aimed at that sort of low percentile of those top people, those top maybe streamers, top enthusiasts, top. We're going to go break every single record out there. We're going to try and build a system that literally blows everything out of the water. Try and build a system that can run this VR thing and make it look like you're actually in. Like, you don't know once you take the headset off if you're in real life or if you're still in the VR sort of thing. That's what those will be aimed towards, in my opinion. And whereas if you look at maybe potentially people like me and you who want top range stuff for gaming, to be able to see all this cool stuff, maybe even be able to dabble in things like VR in a good sort of setting, you'd be looking at the sort of lower ones there, and that would be the sort of market that I expect they'll be wanting to compete more in, rather than this potential high-end market. But I could be wrong. They could just, as you say, just undercut Intel and everything, but it'll see what happens with it, really. And again, once they come out, seeing how each one performs compared to each other, and because that is going to be a big factor once we finally get to see. Have we really seen any sort of not specs as such, but what they can do potentially
for the
for any of these, like?
Yeah, I mean, there's been kind of
Or
leaked performance things, which, I mean, you know, obviously we can't trust them 100%, but yeah, the Threadripper does look amazing. I don't believe the i9 has any leaked like benchmarks or anything. I don't believe, because that was the other thing with the Threadripper. I mean, it looked like the efficiency, if Ryzen is anything to go from, Ryzen when it launched wasn't that amazing, but through BIOS updates and, you know, updates for the processor itself, it's quite efficient. You know, the architecture is quite well put together. So the so it'll be interesting to see if you took you know, a same, because, well, obviously the i9 will be available in a 16-core variant. So it'll be interesting to see if you took the 16-core i9 and the Threadripper, put them at the same clock speed and ran benchmark. You know, that's what I'd be interested to see. Then we could get a nice idea of, oh wow, okay, so, you know, but until that day, till they're both out, you know, I just don't think we're going to get any.
It's all sort of speculation.
It is. It absolutely is.
We can speculate the price, but then you can go, oh, if Threadripper's cheaper but not as efficient as the i9, but it's slightly cheaper still, that might, obviously that sort of stuff's gonna, depending on their gap differences.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you look at those things, Jay, I mean, a lot of people do that performance per pound type of thing. When you look at, you know, like video cards, for example, and looking at, try to compare a 1060 to a 1070. Yes, we know the 1070 is a badass card and it'll obviously blow the water out of a 1060, but if you do the price to performance ratio, the 1060 actually works out, I'm pretty sure, a little bit better, just in that regard. You know, it's quite, you know, it's a metric that a lot of people use. You know, instead of getting the baddest ass best, they look at, well, wait a minute, no, I want the best bang for my buck. Oh, look, you know, instead of getting an i7, an i5 overclocked with, you know, whatever, instead of getting a 1080, getting two RX 480s and Crossfire or some crap, you know, just a lot of folk do that.
And this is where it comes down to that average buyer thing of, they are the average buyer. As you say, those people that want to blow specs out of the water and benchmarks and everything, those are the people that do not care about the money.
Exactly.
They will, I mean, they want to.
This is the thing. I think I think AMD is in a position where their pricing a Threadripper isn't going to make or break them. I think they're actually in a comfortable... I'm not saying they can ask whatever the hell they want for it, but I think they're in a position where it's not as dramatic as it was before. But, and I hate trying to argue with myself here, but with the i9 coming, then at the same time, they've got an opportunity here to really kind of capitalize on it and go, well, look, we can offer you comparable performance for, two-thirds, say 80%. Say if it was even, well, I mean, if we consider that the 18 cores $2,000, the 10 cores $1,000, so, if they were offering Threadripper for $1,000, that's still pricey as all hell, but it might, still be quite
exactly
competitive, I suppose. Yes. But no, and exciting stuff. We'll see as the months come how these machines actually perform, and like Jay says, what people will be able to do with them. Will we see 7 gig? Is that what's going to happen? Who knows? Right, let's move on to a little bit of gaming news. This article is from the Enterprise Daily. And, of course, this was to do with the new DLC for Ghost Recon Wildlands called Fallen Ghosts. It came on early for Season Pass holders. We got it on, what was it? Was it Tuesday? Tuesday or Monday, I believe. We got it. And I think, is it today that it releases for everyone else? Or was it... Why can't I think of my actual dates? No, it's not out yet. Sorry. It's, I love it when a website just gives you ads. Perfect. Yes.
You gotta love that.
So, yeah, it came out the 30th for Season Pass owners. And if you don't have the Season Pass, it won't be available till June 6th. So there you go. I mean... I haven't played it yet, right? I started up to have a look at it, and the way that Fallen Ghost was described, right? I mean, I read about it before it came out, and it was saying that, look, the DLC is going to have 15 new missions, and new bosses. Just like the main campaign, you can do this on your own or with the AI or, with up to 3 other friends. And the way that they slated it was that, look, it's going to be a really challenging set of missions. And it was a continuation of the story, right? With the Fallen Ghost DLC, the level cap was coming up to 35, because the DLC has new skills that can only be learned once you reach that cap. And it was supposed to be, the premise of the story was, and I don't want to spoil the main campaign for anyone that hasn't played it, so I'll just say, after the events of the main game, this is you returning to Bolivia. And I thought, wow, great, cool, so I'm going to be able to load in, the level cap's raised, I'm going to load into the main game, and now continue my story, but the situation's changed, now I've got more levels to grind out. But no. Just like Narco Road, this is a separate activity on the menu. It is, once again, you've got, your continue game, start Narco Road, and then you've got start Fallen Ghosts. And it just left me going, what? Really? So, press the button, go in, once again, character creation. You've got to remake your guy or gal, whatever you've chosen, do all the visuals. But then as soon as you fire it up and you get in the game and you get the story stuff, the cutscene, you notice that on your skill tree, you've got everything. Your skill tree is fully unlocked. And I believe I was level 30. I believe. And then, so it was a bit weird. It was like an artificial... You know what I mean, Jay? It just was like, wait, what? Does this mean if someone buys the game, they could jump straight into it? I don't know. I don't know if it's a case of if it only does that because my character's already 30 and I already finished the main story. I don't know if maybe DLC's locked out if you haven't. If it is, then okay, that makes it a little bit better. But I don't understand why they've got this whole. It's a completely separate game. You know what I mean? A game within the game.
Who made that design decision? Because I think it's so stupid.
Okay, you do start off in a different area. I get that. It's like a new map, but it just seems lazy. You know what I mean? Like, would it be so difficult to implement these new missions and all this new stuff that they just said, you know what? Nope, that's probably going to break too much stuff. Let's just, we'll make a new little mini game within it. I don't understand it either.
The thing is, I can understand them with Narco Road and probably with Fallen Ghost as well. Them wanting to almost do separate loadings. Okay, I can understand from a point of view why that is, because obviously ruining anything but the events of the first part, your main story, is going to have a knock-on effect to potentially how that's going to your zone's going to end up looking.
Mm-hmm.
I understand again the way Narco Road set up. Again, understandable. I completely understand from a design decision point of view why they've done that, because it makes it a nightmare chase.
Oh yeah. Narco Road, the world's completely different, isn't it? With all these tricks and crap to do.
But fair enough them doing that. But everything from your main campaign to the carried over, instead of just literally being almost loading up into a new map, but with your same character. So your character, the look, the levels, all your weapons you've got unlocked, your setups on those weapons. For example, say maybe you can't play Fallen Ghost until you've completed the campaign. Great, but if you complete the campaign, for example, obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything here, I had to spend so much time farming and grinding out the resources to fully hit every single skill tree unlock. And so if you finish off, for example, the main story, and then loading Fallen Ghost, it's then take up what you've got unlocked as your skill trees, not give you everything. Again, I don't know how the skill tree works in Fallen Ghost, but that's what they should have done.
Well, see, that's the thing, Jay. For instance, I have, in my skill tree, I have all of the last things unlocked, obviously, but I don't have full points everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't went that far. I have not 100%ed my skill tree. But as soon as I loaded up Fallen Ghosts, my skill tree was 100%.
And that implies that's a decision choice, and I don't like that at all, because like I said, I put the time and effort in the main story, farming up a lot of convoys, and I had a whole entire plan I made up to do it, way of doing it quickly, so I actually slowly increase my tactical plan for it all to actually have me be able to get them in the best possible times. But to then be able to go into an expansion which has been shown as a follow-on, to then have that happen is kind of a bit of a almost. Yeah, it's not a kick in the teeth, but
it's a bit of a letdown. But with that said, I know it sounds that we're being really, really negative. I mean, I think a lot of it. I speak for both of us, Jay. We enjoyed the story in Wildlands.
I really enjoyed it.
We enjoyed. It was like playing through a film. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't an amazing script. There was issues here and there, but it was decent. It was a good story. You were interested. You became. If you allowed yourself to become invested, you did. So I think with Fallen Ghosts, I'm interested in how the story is going to continue. And what I was going to propose to you, Jay,
yes,
do you want to maybe just get together and we'll play through the DLC together?
We will have to.
You know what I mean? Since we've both basically 100% of the game, right? We're not going to screw each other's, things. Well, it's a separate game anyway, so it's not going to screw anything up. But I thought maybe that would be quite cool, that we just figure a date where we can sit down and just get together and maybe delve into Fallen Ghosts with each other. It will make it more difficult because it's just two of us. Because allegedly Fallen Ghosts, the difficulty levels ramped up. It's supposed to be challenging. But hey, we like a challenge, right?
So exactly. It's not fun if it isn't, is it?
We should be fine. But hey, look, so full details of Fallen Ghost can obviously be seen at Ubisoft's website. There's a bunch of changes to drone. The drones are getting improvements, new weapons and whatnot, and of course the level cap being raised. But if you don't have the season pass, look, it'll be out for you on June 6th, and actually right now is a great time to buy Wildlands. because there's a Tom Clancy sale going on right now, where you can save up to 80% on certain games, ranging from old ones on the 360 to things like Rainbow Six Siege and, of course, Ghost Recon Wildlands. I don't believe The Division is discounted, but I think The Division's already cheap as it is, I think. But so there you go. Wildlands, Fallen Ghosts. Right, I really, really briefly want to talk about a cool little game. I think Gim probably will have a fair bit to say about this. This is from a site that, if you've never heard of, you need to go visit sometime. It's called Rock Paper Shotgun, and it's just a great little site. Usually when it comes to like RPG stuff and other indie games, Rock Paper Shotgun is just a great place to get some news. But so anyway, the headline here is this game that's coming out called Immortal Planet. And the headline there says that it shows off Souls-inspired action. Immortal Planet is basically... they're from the same developer as Ronin, which Ronin was a turn-based hack and slash that was stealthy. And so this new game is an isometric, right? That kind of 3D at an angle view action RPG that has been described as Souls-like. Now, as soon as I mentioned that, Gim had some interesting thoughts on that statement, didn't you, sir?
I just don't like the term Souls-like. It feels more like... Because I can kind of get the roguelike sort of term, which is used a lot, but Souls-like feels like they're trying to capitalize off of another game's success.
Yeah. No,
It feels different, if you get what I mean.
No, absolutely get you. It's, what they're saying is that this game is basically, unlike a lot of action RPGs, you're not going to be able to just go in and button mash, right? It's going to focus on slow-paced, precise combat. And I think, you know me, I'm not a Souls expert. I haven't, personally played any of them. I've watched a bunch, but I'm just... haven't quite got there yet, but whenever I watch it, it does look like, well, you can't just button mash, you have to have a bit of kind of tactics with...
It's very sort of paced out, and you have to... The slightest error in movement can just destroy you and stuff like that.
So I'm hoping that's the only aspect of their comparison. I think that's what they mean. But as you say, yeah, it's just...
That doesn't constitute a Souls-like.
Yeah. There's plenty of games that require precise, slow-paced kind of moves, isn't there?
The games I would actually describe as Souls-like so far that I've really seen have been the two from, I can't remember the dev's name, but they did more recently The Surge, and before then Lords of the Fallen.
Yeah.
I didn't like Lords of the Fallen, it was not as well polished Dark Souls.
Yeah, that wasn't... I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, this looks really good.
The Surge is an interesting way. It's like, instead of trying to copy, let's change the setting entirely. And
no, the Surge is quite... It's had mixed reception, but yeah, it looks interesting. But yeah, this Immortal Planet, it looks really, really quite nice. It's a deliberate combat system focused on dodging. Aesthetically, it looks really, really nice. This type of... how would you describe that, Gim? It's what, like... It looks better than 8-bit, but not quite 16-bit. Or it just...
I think the popular term for that sort of stuff is retro-inspired graphics.
Yes, yeah. It's where it looks retro, but it doesn't look ancient.
It's not actually retro. It's done modern.
So it looks quite neat. This is a very, very early. Well, I say early, but the footage that I have of it is very early. There's nothing new and up to date. But basically, we know that this is coming out sometime in July. So there you go. Keep an eye out for that. I would imagine a small game like that will probably be priced quite affordably. But no, so it could be quite interesting. Oh, with any hope, hey, if it's on a Humble Bundle or something later down the line, that'd be quite handy.
If it's really good, you work getting before then.
You know, but so there, Immortal Planet. I'll tell you what. Why don't we? I'm going to mix this up. We'll talk about another game next as well. Now, this was quite interesting. This was huge news. I mean, this was just probably the biggest story for me of the week. It caught me completely off guard. I was not ready for it. The minute I saw it, I was just in complete shock. I had to collect myself, and I immediately acted upon discovering this. This is from a source that I have never used. This has just happened to show up in my news app on my phone. The name of the site is called Clothes Horse. So as you can imagine, I think they mainly deal with style and music, and they've got a little bit of tech. But for all you old school gamers out there, the original Crazy Taxi from Sega is now available on your smartphone, and it's completely free. So yes, you can once again be trying to pick folk up and not kill them and deliver them as fast as you can. I immediately installed this on my phone and immediately played it, and I just felt like I was a kid all over again. If I'm honest, the controls on a phone weren't that great. If you remember Crazy Taxi in the arcade, it actually did have a wheel. I think there were variants of it. You could have the stand-up version with a wheel. I think there was a sit-down version with the wheel.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think.
That's
and
one was the stand-up one.
And then, wasn't Crazy Taxi on Dreamcast?
Yes.
So, you know, you could obviously play with a controller then. But so anyway, when it comes to the port, the graphics are great. The music is excellent. The whole feel of it is just, you know, it's really, really cool. And it's, you know, the music's that 90s kind of punk and rock soundtrack. You know, definitely quite cool. You can play it, you know, with either using the controls, which is what I was doing. You can tilt it as well, which I might have to try. But it does support controller support as well, depending on your platform. Whilst it's free and you don't have to pay a penny, well, guess what that means, as with a lot of mobile games today? Yeah, it's got ads. And I mean aggressive ads. Like, as soon as you load up, it's got a little bit of stuff going on. When I tried to play the game, and immediately it came up with some kind of RTS strategy thing that was actually like a demo, and I couldn't find the X to close it, and it made me actually play a little bit of it. So I wasn't too pleased with that. So basically, you know, you can pay $2 and go ad-free. So I might look into that. I might actually consider paying that just to get rid of that. You know, I know that kind of goes against the whole, hey, look, you know, it's free, it's free, it's free. But honestly, with those ads, it's a huge drag. Aside from the ads, though, oh my god, it was. I was in school yesterday, and you know, in class, and we were waiting on things happening, and so I just, you know, got out my phone, started playing it. Folk like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm playing the original Crazy Taxi. And then immediately a dozen people all got in their app stores and started downloading it. Yeah, such a fun game. Guys, ever play much Crazy Taxi when you were younger?
Played it in the arcade a few times.
Oh, yeah, briefly.
Never had a device that actually had it myself.
I just always remember, like, at the time, it was cool. Like, it was funky, the graphics were good. But I always remember, like, I was never very good at it. And I love driving games, but that game just, it would always kick my ass, you know. You would just, you know, so I wouldn't really waste that much money on it in the arcade. But I think it's nice to see yet another one of those classic Sega games when Sega was, you know, really at its prime in the arcade scene. And it's nice to see that a company that, well, for quite a while we thought was just going to completely go underwater has actually been able to survive and is doing things like this to keep it alive. So that's quite nice. But yeah, Crazy Taxi. So if you fancy some nostalgia, You can get it now for free on Android and Apple, but just be warned about those ads. So yeah, it might end up not being free at all if you want to keep it. Right, let's see. Our last bit of news here is back to hardware. Excuse me. This is once again from WCCF Tech, and this is about monitors. You know, we love monitors, right? Monitors are great, you know, for computing, for gaming, productivity, you know, and I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of us that find ourselves in a position we have to skimp. You know, we have to try to find the least expensive, you know, or a monitor that we can afford. But honestly, you know, if you can be able to, you know, if you can spread your budget a little and get a good quality, you know, monitor, it does make a difference with your gaming experience. So anyway, we've got new monitors that have been announced by Asus and Acer, and these are HDR ultra wides. The resolution of 3440 by 1440p, right? So 1440p ultra wide monitors at 200 hertz, and of course they've got G-Sync. Those of you that game, obviously you know about vertical sync, you know how that works, but these technologies like G-Sync are just on a totally different level. G-Sync allows, you know, the video card and the monitor to actually be in perfect communication. It's not just a case of the monitor displaying the signal. G-Sync means they're actually connected, and so your V-Sync is just on an absolutely different level. So these new premium monitors, again, they're way out of my price range, I would imagine, but they look amazing. They've got some 35-inch curved ones that have the 21:9 ratio. If I just pull up an image again real quick, as you can see right here, gorgeous looking monitors, very, very nice. But so the gaming ones have G-Sync, they're 21.9, 1440p, and that blistering fast refresh rate of 200 hertz. But then they also discussed their new G-Sync HDR monitors. So these were 27-inch panels that are in 4K with HDR. And they look very, very nice. They're the Asus Predator and the Asus ROG Republic of Gamers Swift. And these are in this image right here. But, oh, I mean, again, these monitors are going to be available sometime later in the summer. And I would imagine you're really going to have your checkbook out for these. We'll slap them on the credit card as long as your limit's high enough, because the stats on them is just amazing. You know, with these G-Sync monitors, obviously you need to have DisplayPort. Normal HDMI will not work. You know, so if you've got a modern video card, you're probably okay. You know, you'll have a video card that outputs DisplayPort. If you don't, you're going to have to look into getting one of these adapter cables. You can buy cables that have an HDMI on one end and a DisplayPort on the other. But pretty much as we move forward in the realms of video technology, DisplayPort is becoming the standard. Especially when you get into the 8K panels, which 8K requires 2 DisplayPort cables going into the monitor from your computer. But no, I mean they're nice. You know, I've the only time I spent silly money on a monitor was a really, really long time ago. Back when we still used, you know, cathode ray tube CRTs, right? And I remember getting a 19-inch Sony CRT. The thing weighed more than I did, but it had a no, I'm sorry, it wasn't a 19. I'm telling a lie. It was a 20. It was a 20 or 20.5, and it had a resolution of 1600 by 1200. And I remember Morrowind had just came out on PC, and playing Morrowind at 1600 by 1200, because at the time I had a GeForce 4 Ti 4600, and oh my god, it was amazing. And that was the only time I spent a lot of money on a monitor. I mean, now I'm using two 24-inch Samsungs, which were medium range, not crazy expensive, but a fair, a bit more than I would have paid usually, but I had the money for them. But monitors, I think, they're so often overlooked. I mean, have you guys ever had that experience when you've got like a better monitor, a better TV, and you're just kind of playing the same games, but with a new monitor, just seeing the difference that it makes?
From a game point, yeah, a bit. I think my fondest memory though of anything like that is we used to have like a little, I want to say like almost 16-inch sort of box TV. When I got changed to a 42-inch TV, it was amazing just to see the difference. The same with gaming, isn't it? Really. I remember, as I said, I used to, I had for ages like one of these box. I had a box monitor to give me like this big fat one, so I had a sort of thinner one, but it's like 16-inch. And I upgraded to my 27-inch TV, and it was fantastic. And again, I then used that as a second screen, that 16-inch, and again upgraded, and it is amazing to have it and to see the difference. And I think, as you said earlier, monitors is always something that, for me, always gets pushed to the sideline. It's always, I'm upgrading my PC, and I never think about getting a better monitor, something that's going to make that upgrade look even better. And it's something I need to do at some point.
It's
a third one.
It's even the same in the console world. There's so many folk out there that will get, like an Xbox One. I mean, okay, Xbox Ones at least have came down in price, but remember when they first came out, how ridiculously expensive they were. And hooking something like that up to one of these supermarket specials, that cost like just over £100. I mean, it's a shame. You're not getting the same experience. I mean, we've talked about it before, where like we have a nice TV. We have a nice 50-inch television. All singing, all dancing. Yeah, it's only 1080 because we bought it in that era. But the difference between playing the Xbox One on that and coming to a decent computer monitor is amazing. Yeah, it's smaller, but the just the crispness and all of those things it's a shame. I mean, I know not everyone's in the position where they can spend money that way, but I think you're right. I think it's overlooked. People would rather, oh no, I'll spend that extra £50 on a better video card, whereas if they'd invested that £50 on a monitor, it'd make more of a difference. Because I think another thing is too, when it comes to hardware and whatnot, I mean, if you might have to upgrade that, change it out and whatnot, whereas a monitor can last for quite a while, unless you want to up your resolution. I mean, like, I've got 1080 panels, which is perfect for me, but yeah, maybe in another 5 years 1080 game and it'll be, like 8-bit. It'll be retro. Maybe I'll have to step up to 1440. Maybe 10 years from now, 4K is the norm. So, but you know what I mean, though? Monitors tend to be, you don't hear people upgrading their monitors all the time when compared to things like video cards or, other peripherals. Spending £100 on a mouse, £200 on a mechanical keyboard. Yet they go buy, the cheapest monitor they can from Best Buy or wherever, the Curry's PC World. This doesn't make sense. Does not make sense.
It does not.
Well, that is about an hour. Those are all the news items for this evening.
Tech heavy, so I didn't talk much.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was tech heavy, and I think I thought this really was a case of jungle drumming along tonight. It was, I mean, I suppose is what happened. These were news items that I'd picked, and they were all, I mean, especially the processor stuff. I mean, you guys know me. I'm so into this. I mean, it's relevant to me with my current stuff I'm doing at school, and it just, this is, a lot of people use the internet to look at certain videos and images and stuff, for their own kind of gains, if you know what I mean, without actually saying what it is. Whereas that stuff, that is that for me. you know, hearing about new processors and everything, it just really, really gets me going. Absolutely love it. But yeah, hey, thank you so much for tuning in to Jungle Drums. As always, you can catch us live on Mixer every Thursday at 9 p.m. But then, of course, you can watch us anytime you want on demand, whether that's on YouTube, whether that's on scholarlygamers.com. Feel free to share the video as much as you want. Like if you like, dislike if you don't. And we will see you next week for the next episode of Jungle Drums. Thanks so much for watching.